You ever notice how spending money in games never really feels like spending money? Like you're not dropping $20 on the banner, you are buying it with Primo Gems or Lunites or event tickets. And half the time, the store looks like some kind of cosmic Chuck E. Cheese. But instead of tokens for skee-ball, you are trading real money for disappointment. And we all just sort of accept it. I mean, we joke about it a lot. We make memes, right? Haha, I spent $10,000 and I got 8 Wolf's Gravestone. The jokes are funny until you realize they're covering up a system designed to bleed you dry. And yet no one in power ever said anything to change that until now. You don't walk into a grocery store and buy 700 snack credits so you can maybe get a bag of chips, right? But in games, that logic is everywhere and it works. It works because it is supposed to confuse you, blur the lines, make you feel like you're spending less even when you're not. And yeah, maybe you knew that already. God, you're so smart. But the point is, no one with power ever did anything about it. Not really until now. Because this week, the FTC, yes, that FTC, finally stepped into the ring, and instead of targeting some sketchy mobile clone app, they aimed straight at the clown of gacha predatory system Genshin Impact. Let's dive into it. The FTC has stepped in and said, enough, at least in the United States. The era of mystery money might finally be on its way out, starting with Genshin Impact. Under this new regulation, if a game sells you something with premium currency, it has to clearly show you what you're getting in return, not in vague in-game units, real-world dollar terms. So if you're buying a pack that gives you like what, 50 pulls, you will see right there on the page, this is $100. And yeah, that math works out to about $1.98 per pull, which is a little bit wild because it means every time you do a 10 pull, you are basically lighting a $20 bill on fire. Because now, when you hit that summon button, you are not just throwing some abstract points at a banner, you are spending $2 every single time. And that is not even factoring in the pity system or the 50-50 gamble to actually get what you want. It completely changes the mental framing. Before it was like, oh, I got 3,200 gems, I can roll. Now it's, do I really want to spend $6 for 3 shots at a 0.6% chance? And that difference matters. And the irony is, companies know it matters. That is why they fought so hard for years to keep it abstract. And when the cost becomes visible, players think harder. And when players think harder, they spend less. There has already been a wave of reactions on Reddit and Twitter. Some people are calling it a Genshin W, which, let's be honest, it's not. Genshin did not volunteer this out of goodwill. They are complying because they have to. The W here isn't for Genshin. It is for the consumers finally being told the truth. Look, there is this weird trend right now where people are trying to spin Genshin's compliance with the FTC as some kind of a dub. Like, wow, transparency. Hoyoverse is really stepping up. That is my $1 million company. Hail Dawei. And I just have to say, like, no, man, that's not what this is. This wasn't a moral choice. They didn't wake up one day and decide to treat players better. Not in a really long time either. They updated the store because they had to. The FTC regulation made it mandatory, and Hoyoverse did the bare minimum not to get fined. That is not virtue, that is legal compliance. And when you really think about it, it is kind of telling that just telling the truth about how much a poll costs feels like a groundbreaking move. People forget, these systems have been in place for years. These companies have been perfectly fine letting players unknowingly spend hundreds without ever saying, hey, this is actually $2 per roll. They had every opportunity to be transparent before the regulators got involved, and they didn't because
obfuscation
is profitable. So no, this isn't a goodwill update. It is a forced pivot, not a character arc. Let's not start handing out gold stars for basic honesty after half a decade of grift. The moment you make a cost of a pull visible, it starts messing with the conversion rates. Let's walk through the numbers, right? If you spend $50, that gets you about 24 pulls. $100 gets you 50, and already that should be raising eyebrows because pity in Genshin starts at 90 pulls. So you could drop $100 and not even be close to soft pity. And that is before you even factor in the 50-50. Now let's do the math on actual cost of a guaranteed 5-star. Assuming you lose the coin toss once, you are looking at 180 pulls. Multiply that by $1.98 per pull, and yeah, you're in the $475 range for one singular character. No constellations and no weapons. If you want the weapons too, hope you're ready to go again. Weapon banners have their own pity, and it's even worse. You could be very realistically end up spending $900 plus to get both the character and their best in slot weapon. That is not an exaggeration, that is just the math. People on the internet have been doing this breakdown since the change dropped. The comments are filled with people saying things like, I didn't realize it was this bad, or this makes it harder to justify pulling. Because when the cost is vague, you can convince yourself it's fine. But when the store tells you in plain text that your 10 pull costs $20, it hits different. It forces a pause. And that pause, that's the moment of doubt. And that is what kills conversion. Genshin didn't want this. None of them do, because clarity kills impulse. And impulse is the only thing keeping this monetization model alive. This whole shift feels like an end of an era. For a long time, gacha games in the West operated like it was the Wild West. Zero oversight, zero accountability, just vibes and predatory monetization. If you followed the genre for a while, this probably reminds you of Japan's big turning point with Grand Blue Fantasy. Back in 2016, there was a massive public outcry after a player dropped over $6,000 chasing a limited character and still didn't get them. That kicked off a wave of self-regulation and eventually actual legal intervention, forcing clearer rates and spending caps. And now, nearly a decade later, the United States is finally waking up to the same problem. What we are seeing with the FTC isn't the finish line. It is the starting gun. It is the first real sign that the Western governments are stepping into digital consumer protection, not just letting game companies write their own rules. And yeah, it is clumsy and slow and way overdue, but that is how these things always go. Same thing happened with crypto, right? No regulation until people lost millions in rug pulls and vaporware, and then suddenly the SEC shows up like, hey, maybe this shouldn't be legal. Gacha games just happen to use anime girls instead of meme coins. But the core issue is the same. Technology moving faster than the laws built to protect people from it. So if it feels like something fundamental is shifting, it is. This is the moment where regulators start drawing lines that, for once, the publishers can't just redraw later. The other part of this story, the one that is kind of flying under the radar, is the age gating. As part of the same FTC push, games like Genshin will soon be required to verify user age, and accounts under a certain threshold will face restrictions or flat out be blocked from making purchases. And honestly, that is good. That should have been in place years ago. And let's be real, gacha monetization banks on two extremes: whales who will throw thousands into banners without blinking, and kids who don't fully understand how money works and ends up draining their parents' credit card because Robin is for the girlies. One of those groups is willingly exploited. The other doesn't even have the tools to consent. Personally, I think the bar should be set at 16 minimum, around the age that you can get a job. Start understanding budgeting and maybe understand the concept of diminishing returns. If you are not old enough to earn the money yourself, you shouldn't be able to blow it on RNG slot machines dressed up as adventure games. The age check isn't going to fix everything, but it does close off one of the most shameless loopholes these games have leaned on for years. It forces developers to finally acknowledge that their audience includes minors. And if they want to keep raking in mobile billions, they're gonna have to deal with that reality like an actual industry, not a casino disguised as a fandom. But there is always that reactionary wave of fear that comes up anytime regulations hit the gaming space. What if they just pull out of America? Like companies are gonna pack their bags and abandon one of the biggest consumer markets on the planet just because someone finally told them, hey, maybe don't scam children. Reality check. If Genshin Impact, a game run by one of the most profit-obsessed companies in the space, decided to comply and stay, then everyone else will too. The money's too good. They will adapt, and they always do. We have seen this before. Lost Ark's Western version had to soften its monetization and delay some content to meet regional standards, but it still launched, it still made money, and it still held onto a decent player base for a while. Companies would rather compromise on their monetization strategy than sacrifice a market share. It is not about morals, it is business calculus. And honestly, this is probably the least painful adaptation these studios could ask for. They don't even have to change the system. They just have to stop pretending a bundle of 1.6k Primo gems is some kind of abstract spiritual gift and not a $20 transaction. Now technically, what happened with the FTC isn't a legal precedent in a way court rulings are, but let's not get hung up on legal jargon. What matters is that this sets a functional example. The US government now has a case file. They can point to Genshin and say, hey, we made them disclose pull cost and age gating accounts, so we can make you do it too. And that is how regulation builds, one high-profile enforcement at a time. It is not just about Hoyoverse. This opens the door for scrutiny for every game with similar mechanics. FIFA packs, League of Legends loot bundles, even some of the sketchier mobile garbage that thrives on misleading kids and low-income players into blowing cash that they don't have. This wasn't a one-off punishment, it's a blueprint. The industry now knows that there's a new baseline for what is acceptable, and even if they won't admit it publicly, they are watching this unfold very closely. And at the end of the day, this is not just Genshin's story, it is a shift in how the entire live service model is being forced to evolve. For years, games have gotten away with hiding the real cost of their systems behind fake currencies, emotionally manipulative system, emotionally manipulative design, and monetization schemes aimed at the most vulnerable audiences. And for the first time in a long time, someone actually told them, no, you can't keep doing that. This isn't some instant win. It is not going to clean the industry overnight, but it is a real start. And the more games are forced to be honest about the cost, about the odds, about who they are targeting, the more power players have to make informed choices. It is overdue, it is not perfect, but it is happening. And that matters more than any banner, any update, or any live stream cry session ever could. But that is all from me, 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝘁, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!